So something somewhat new this year to link Mount Sinai is a dedicated venous tract, which obviously is this afternoon here in the Stern Auditorium. My name is Robert Lookstein. I am Chief of Interventional Radiology here for the Mount Sinai Health System. And hopefully we're going to talk about some very, very important deep venous issues for the rest of the afternoon. The Venous Symposium has been a very important part of the Link Congress in Europe for many years now, close to a decade, and we really thought that this year was going to be prescient to bring it to Link Mount Sinai. The topics we're going to discuss this afternoon, and we have a variety of experts from around the country that are going to teach us about these topics and show us some very interesting live cases, are really deep vein thrombosis and venous thromboembolism, the manifestations of which not just for acute and chronic pulmonary embolism, but also chronic venous occlusions, the post-thrombotic syndrome, venous ulceration, which is unfortunately a real epidemic in terms of healthcare spending, certainly in the United States, but I also know globally as well. There's a tremendous amount of research that's emerged in the last 5 to 6 years that appears to align venous compression syndromes with not only incidence of leg swelling, leg edema, and the post-thrombotic syndrome, but perhaps even deep vein thrombosis and pulmonary embolism as well. And then lastly, we're going to end the afternoon discussing inferior vena cava filters, which have really been in the lay press recently. The cause of a lot of speculation as to who they in fact do offer benefit to. Are there too many complications to make it a palatable technology? And we're going to hopefully dive into that as well. So just as a background before we get into the formal lectures, we all are aware that deep vein thrombosis is it's really one of the more common cardiovascular diseases in this country. Certainly 500,000 by most estimates new cases diagnosed annually. And again, the post-thrombotic syndrome is affecting a very, very high percentage of patients with proximal DVT. And so this is really a diagnosis that demands a tremendous amount of healthcare resources, a tremendous amount of healthcare diagnostic intensity, and hopefully what we'll learn about this afternoon is some very, very novel endovascular solutions. Again, venous ulcers, there are some estimates between 500,000, maybe more Medicare beneficiaries that have chronic venous ulcers, and obviously these are people who are severely debilitated, and this is costing billions of dollars to CMS funds annually. Pulmonary embolism, another manifestation of deep vein thrombosis, again, another 500,000 cases diagnosed annually. We certainly see this in our healthcare system. This is a very catastrophic diagnosis. We all know there's a correlation between lower extremity DVT and acute pulmonary embolism. Most patients who present with an acute pulmonary embolism have either acute or subacute symptoms of lower extremity deep vein thrombosis. And by some estimates, some epidemiologic studies, it appears that up to 50% of patients with proximal DVT have some radiographic evidence of a pulmonary embolism when they are in fact studied. Pulmonary embolism is unfortunately one of the leading causes of in-hospital deaths, and so that's why there's been this tremendous interest now in trying to sort of curb this pattern, lower the in-hospital mortality rates. More people die from pulmonary embolism than many types of cancer. It appears that endovascular therapy is becoming much more prevalent. We're going to try and do a deep dive into the science behind that and try and sort of give glimpses as to how the future holds for this emerging marketplace. There's a litany of endovascular technologies, which I'm going to leave to my esteemed faculty to discuss here. We really have not find a default strategy for not only DVT and pulmonary embolus, but I think we're starting to gain a lot of prospective data, which hopefully will give us answers moving forward. Again, what the exact relationship of venous compression syndromes, whether it's May-Thurner, Paget-Schroeder, or Nutcracker syndrome, we just don't know yet, but there's a lot of prospective data being collected right now to try and elucidate this. And again, lastly, the use of inferior vena cava filters really blossomed embolism grew by over 100% in the last decade. While it's become somewhat curbed recently, we really just don't know which is the ideal device, which is the safest device. There's a lot of prospective data looking at this right now as well. So there's a tremendous amount of information that we all need to share, we all need to learn this afternoon, and I hope everybody enjoys themselves. So without any further ado, I just wanted to welcome everyone to the afternoon session. I wanted to give a warm thank you to the expert faculty that we've been able to align here, and I think you'll see some very, very interesting cases this afternoon. My first speaker for this session for the venous symposium. This session will be focusing on acute deep vein thrombosis, and the first speaker will be Aki Sista, who is the Chief of Interventional Radiology at NYU Langone Medical Center. And Aki is going to be discussing the endovascular management of iliofemoral DVT. What have we learned from the recent prospective randomized studies? Aki, thank you very much for joining us this afternoon.